Welcome back to GrowthTV. I'm Carolyn Vallejo, and I'm here today with Mike Waite, CMO of SourceScrub, which has released a new study. So, Mike, I want to first begin by talking about what was the motivation behind this report? What was the kind of overall question that you set out to answer?
Yeah, so obviously we're talking to customers all the time, and they've been telling us very recently that deal flow has come something close to a standstill, right? There are deals out there, but valuation expectations have changed dramatically and they haven't quite adjusted to market realities yet. So as a result, deals aren't getting done. But at the same time, funds are continuing to close really large funds. I think there's something like $2.3 trillion in dry powder that needs to be deployed. And so as a result, firms are feeling a great deal of pressure to put that money to work. So with such a big dramatic change in market conditions from really just like 6 months ago, we were curious how firms are adjusting their expectations to the year ahead. And so what we did was sent surveys around to a cross section of the deal making world. For us, that's private equity firms, investment banks, corporate M&A teams, to get a sense of how they're feeling. I think we ended up with something close to 100 completed surveys. And so I think the data we have to report on here is pretty stable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a lot of dry powder at the same time. It's a challenging environment. So in terms of the overall findings of this research, what were they and did they line up with what you had expected?
To be honest, I don't think we knew what to expect, right? A swing of this magnitude is pretty rare. So I think, firms have been trending in recent years toward more direct deal sourcing. But over the last couple of years, there was such an abundance of inbound deal flow that transition to direct sourcing kind of took a back seat to dealing with all the live deals that were in front of them. So although we were looking for a little change in that, I think what we found was kind of surprising and a bit of a contradiction. The majority of firms that we heard from, about 64% of them, said that direct sourcing is the top of their priority list looking into the year ahead. 78% said that data was going to play a really important role in finding and evaluating and closing those deals. But at the same time, 90% of the people we surveyed said that they will continue to rely on indirect and intermediated deals as their number one source of opportunities in the year ahead. So their intentions, right, and what they're actually telling us about what they're going to do seem to be in conflict with one another.
Mm-hmm. So you just mentioned data, which is something I want to talk a little bit more about. One of the stats that we found in the report is that only 12% of respondents felt that data is a strategic differentiator. Can you talk a little bit about why that might be and potentially how deal makers might be able to leverage this point in order to gain a competitive advantage?
Yeah, I mean, considering what we heard from respondents about the importance of data in their deal making processes, it's a surprisingly low number. I think the data seem to indicate that firms understand the importance of data and technology and process in their direct sourcing efforts, but they haven't yet really taken the steps that they need to turn information and technology into a competitive advantage. I think what we're seeing right now, conditions are likely to be the tipping point that push firms into a lot of those steps, a lot of those investments that they need to make in order to really realize the advantages that they think are possible. And so I think we're going to see some pretty dramatic changes in the year ahead. One of the things we learned that seems to be holding firms back is that they don't currently have a lot of confidence in their data. And it isn't that they don't have data, right? I think just 16% of the people who responded to our survey said that not having enough data was a problem for them. In fact, the opposite, like 30% actually reported that they feel like they have too much data and it's not organized, it's scattered around the firm, it isn't coordinated or managed necessarily. So managing that data, keeping it fresh and accurate, actionable and available really seems to be more the heart of the challenge, the thing that's holding some of these firms back. And that seems to be because firms haven't yet invested in the expertise and the systems that they're going to require to bring that about. So 73% of the firms that we surveyed said at this point, they lack someone on the team who is really solely focused on managing, analyzing, and modeling data for the firm. And when it comes to the data specifically, 40% said they feel that the data is either outdated or inaccurate or in some way it's incomplete.
So definitely room for improvement there. But Mike, before I let you go, are there any other noteworthy insights from this report?
Yeah, so I mean, related to some other research that we've done, strategic use of data goes hand in hand with the technology and the specialized skill set that are required to make good use of them. We've studied deal-making firms' use of data and technology, and we've discovered this really direct correlation between increasingly sophisticated uses of data and technology and the performance outcomes measured in terms of the number of transactions and the realized IRR from those investments. So data, technology, people, these three things all have to come together. They all play really important roles in moving forward. One thing in isolation doesn't really have that much of an impact. So I mentioned before, just 27% of the firms we surveyed have someone who's really solely focused on the data, the analytics, and the reporting. It was also surprising to learn that technology, the use of technology for automating outreach, for scaling analytics and reporting, even CRM are still surprisingly low in the firms out there, right? So if I'm summing it all up, right, I think firms see a different period ahead. They understand that using data and technology are really going to be key to driving deal flow and performance, but investments in these areas have been lagging, and that's likely to be the key for them going forward.
A lot of really valuable insights there. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today and sharing some of those findings.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.